Loyalty. For 11 years, I gave them everything. My nights, my weekends, my sanity. And when I discovered new hires were making 49% more than me, they shrugged and said 2 words that changed my life forever. Company policy. So I opened my laptop, pulled out 11 years of evidence, and showed them exactly what their policy was worth. If you've ever felt undervalued, underpaid, or betrayed by people you'd bled for, this story is for you. Hit that like button, subscribe, and buckle in, because this is about what happens when loyalty dies and revenge is born. My name is Maya Carter, and I used to believe that hard work was enough, that dedication would be recognized, that if you just kept your head down, showed up early, stayed late, and poured your soul into your work, the universe would balance the scales. I was wrong. Dead wrong. And it took 11 years, 3 months, and 17 days for me to realize that loyalty isn't a currency in the corporate world. It's a leash. I was 21 when I started at Sterling Dynamics, a mid-tier tech and financial services firm in downtown Seattle that gleamed like a cathedral of glass and steel. My starting salary was $54,000, and I thought I'd won the lottery. Those first few years, I was a sponge, absorbing everything, volunteering for every project no one else wanted. Weekend data migrations, late-night server maintenance, client presentations that needed complete overhauls 72 hours before the pitch. I slept under my desk. I missed my father's heart attack recovery because a quarterly report couldn't wait. I lost relationships, sleep, and pieces of myself I'll never get back. But I told myself it was worth it, that Sterling Dynamics was my family, that I was building something. By year 5, I was leading million-dollar projects. By year 8, I was the fixer everyone came to when things broke, when clients threatened to walk, when executives needed miracles on impossible timelines. My salary crept upward painfully slowly, 3% here, a cost of living adjustment there, until I reached $124,000 after 11 years. It felt earned. I didn't realize I was being boiled alive, 1 degree at a time, while I stayed put thinking I was safe. Then came that Tuesday in March, 11 years and 3 months in, when I walked into the break room needing coffee and overheard 2 fresh-faced kids, still wearing stiff new badge lanyards, laughing about their starting salaries. Dude, my starting salary? $185,000, plus stock options, one of them said, his voice dripping with easy, careless privilege. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. The number ricocheted through my skull like a bullet. $185,000 starting. These kids, probably not even 30 days in, were making 49% more than me. 49% more than someone who'd bled for this company for over a decade. I don't remember walking back to my cubicle, but suddenly I was there, my hands moving on autopilot, searching for industry salary benchmarks. The numbers that came back made my stomach turn. The average for someone with my experience and role was between $160,000 and $190,000. I was $40,000 below market rate, minimum, for 11 years. The math was brutal. I'd been robbed of hundreds of thousands of dollars, not with a gun, but with smiles and company policy and the gentle, insidious lie that loyalty would be rewarded. The rage came slowly at first, like a tide creeping up a beach. Then all at once, it crashed over me. My hands curled into fists, my jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. But I'd been trained over 11 years to be calm, professional, reasonable. So I took a breath and composed an email to HR. Polite, professional, requesting a meeting to discuss compensation alignment with market standards. I attached 3 years of glowing performance reviews, a summary of projects I'd led, and the revenue they generated. I made my case with data, because data was what I knew. The response came 40 minutes later. Hi Maya, we can meet Thursday at 2. Best, Vanessa. Thursday. 2 days away. 48 hours to sit with the knowledge that I'd been undervalued, underpaid, and overlooked while the company I'd given everything to handed out massive salaries to people who hadn't proven a damn thing. I didn't sleep those 2 nights. I lay in my apartment staring at the ceiling, replaying every sacrifice, every late night, every time I said yes when I should have said no, every moment I believed that caring would matter. Thursday arrived and I dressed carefully. Navy blazer, white blouse, hair down but professional, projecting confidence and competence because I wanted them to see someone who deserved to be valued. The HR office was on the 10th floor, where the carpet was thicker and the lighting softer, far away from the cubicle trenches where people like me lived. I was ushered into a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, where Vanessa from HR sat across from Greg Morrison, VP of Human Resources, a man in his 50s with silver hair, an expensive suit, and a smile that never reached his eyes. I stated my case calmly, factually, sliding a printed document across the table. Industry benchmarks, salary data, my worth in black and white. Greg picked it up, glanced at it for maybe 5 seconds, set it down, and looked at me with that practiced corporate smile. "Maya, we appreciate everything you've done for Sterling Dynamics," he said, his tone warm but his eyes cold. "You've been a valuable team member. But you have to understand, compensation is a complex issue. There are a lot of factors at play." I asked, "What factors?" He leaned back, utterly relaxed, and explained that market conditions change, that when I was hired 11 years ago, the landscape was different, that current salaries reflect current market demands for specialized skill sets. I told him I had specialized skill sets, that I'd built half the systems the company runs on. "Of course," Vanessa chimed in with syrupy sweetness, "and we value that. But the reality is we also have to consider budget constraints, internal equity, and company policy." There it was. Company policy. The magic phrase that absolved them of everything. "So, you're telling me," I said slowly, my voice steady even as something fractured inside me, "that because I was loyal, because I stayed here for over a decade, I'm being punished with lower pay?" Greg's smile thinned. "I wouldn't frame it that way. You've received raises, you've progressed, but we can't simply bump everyone up to match every market fluctuation. It's not sustainable." I stared at him. "But you can offer new hires nearly 50% more?" Silence. Greg and Vanessa exchanged a glance that lasted maybe 2 seconds, but I saw everything in it. The dismissal, the calculation, the decision that had already been made before I even walked into the room. "We can revisit your compensation during the next review cycle," Greg said, finally. "But I can't make any promises. Company policy limits the percentage of raises we can offer outside of standard review periods." I stood up, my chair scraping too loud in the quiet room. "Thank you for your time," I said, and walked out. Down the hallway, into the elevator, through the lobby, out onto the street, and kept walking until I couldn't see the building anymore, until the rain started to fall and mixed with something hot on my face that I refused to call tears. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat down at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and stared at my ghostly reflection in the black screen. Then I opened a folder I'd kept for years, buried deep in my personal files. A folder I'd told myself was just insurance, just in case. A folder filled with documents, emails, data logs, and evidence of things Sterling Dynamics really, really didn't want anyone to see. I'd stumbled across the first irregularity in year 4, a client report that didn't match the raw data. I thought it was a mistake. Then I found another, and another. Over the years, I'd quietly documented everything: illegal data practices, privacy violations, forged compliance reports, offshore accounts that didn't match tax filings, environmental, social, and governance reports that were pure fiction. Sterling Dynamics had built its reputation on being ethical, transparent, cutting edge. It was all a lie. And I had 11 years of proof. I'd kept silent because I believed in the company, because I thought I was part of something good, because I hoped that if I just worked hard enough, I'd be valued. But company policy doesn't value loyalty, so why should I took a sip of cold coffee, my hands steady and calm, because for the first time in 11 years, I wasn't working for Sterling Dynamics. I was working against them. The next morning, I woke up at 5:47 a.m. to my alarm, the same alarm that had been dragging me out of sleep for 11 years, and for the first time in my adult life, I considered not going in. My body felt heavy, like someone had filled my bones with concrete while I slept. The folder was still open on my laptop, casting a pale blue glow across my kitchen table where I'd fallen asleep around 3. I stared at the years of evidence, the damning emails, the falsified reports, and felt something twist in my chest. This wasn't just data anymore. This was a weapon, and I didn't know if I had the courage to use it. Because let's be clear about what I was considering. This wasn't some petty revenge, some anonymous Glassdoor review or snarky exit interview. This was annihilation. If I went through with this, if I actually reported what I knew to the SEC, to the media, Sterling Dynamics wouldn't just get a slap on the wrist. They'd be gutted, investigated, possibly destroyed. People would lose their jobs. Not just Greg Morrison with his cold smile and expensive watch, but regular people. People like me who'd given years to this company. Janet from accounting who brought homemade cookies every Friday. Marcus in IT who'd helped me recover a crashed hard drive at midnight. Even Diane, my old manager, who'd called me a rock star, who was probably just as underpaid and undervalued as I was. They'd all suffer. And the weight of that responsibility sat on my chest like a boulder, making it hard to breathe. I sat there in my pajamas, coffee growing cold in my hands, watching the sunrise paint my apartment in shades of pink and gold, and asked myself the question that would haunt me for weeks. Was I really willing to burn it all down? My phone buzzed. A Slack message from my current manager, Derek. Maya, need you on a call at 8, client emergency. Of course. Of course there was an emergency. There was always an emergency. I looked at the message, at the expectation embedded in those 8 words, the assumption that I would drop everything and fix whatever was broken, and something hardened inside me. I typed back, I'll be there, because I wasn't ready to leave yet, not until I knew exactly what I was going to do. I went to work that day, and every day after, moving through the office like a ghost haunting her own life. Everything looked the same. The gleaming lobby, the break room with its kombucha tap, my cubicle in the back corner with the succulent still clinging to life. But I saw it all differently now. I saw the lies, the waste, the casual cruelty of a system that chewed people up and spit them out while executives gave speeches about our greatest asset, our people. I watched the 2 MBA grads, the ones I'd overheard in the break room, stroll in at 9:30 with their expensive coffee, laughing easily, treating this place like a stepping stone to something better. They'd be gone in 2 years, maybe 3, leveraging their Sterling Dynamics experience into even higher salaries somewhere else. Meanwhile, I'd stayed. I'd been loyal. And my loyalty had been repaid with contempt disguised as policy. The rage I'd felt in that HR meeting didn't fade. It evolved, sharpened, turned into something colder and more patient. I started paying attention in ways I never had before. I noticed how Greg Morrison parked in the executive garage and left every day at 4:30 while the rest of us worked until 8, 9, 10 at night. I noticed how Vanessa from HR posted LinkedIn articles about workplace equity and valuing talent, while enforcing policies that did the exact opposite. I noticed the company-wide emails celebrating record profits, up 18% from last year, sent the same week they denied my raise because of budget constraints. Every observation was a drop of gasoline on a fire that was already burning. But I still hesitated, because whistleblowing isn't like it is in the movies. There's no guarantee of protection, no certainty of justice. I researched obsessively in the evenings, reading case after case of whistleblowers who'd been vindicated but destroyed in the process, blacklisted from their industries, buried in legal fees, labeled as disgruntled employees with axes to grind. Even with evidence, even with truth on their side, they'd paid devastating prices. And I'd be going up against a company with resources, lawyers, and every incentive to discredit me. The fear was real, paralyzing sometimes. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning, heart hammering, imagining worst-case scenarios. What if the evidence wasn't enough? What if I'd missed something, some legal loophole that would let them slither away? What if I destroyed my career and nothing changed? The breaking point came 3 weeks after that HR meeting, on a Friday afternoon that started like any other and ended with me sitting in a bathroom stall trying not to scream. Derek had called me into his office that morning with what he described as exciting news. There was a massive new project, he explained, a complete overhaul of our data infrastructure for a client worth $30 million. It was high visibility, high stakes, the kind of project that could make or break careers. "I'm putting together a team," Derek said, leaning back in his chair with his hands behind his head, "and I want you on it. You'll be working under the project lead, of course, but your expertise will be invaluable." Under the project lead. Those words stuck in my throat. "Who's leading?" I asked, though some part of me already knew. Derek smiled. "Kyle Brennan. He's one of our new hires, but he's got an MBA from Wharton and he really impressed the executives in his interview. Sharp kid. I think you two will work great together." Kyle Brennan. The Warby Parker glasses guy from the break room. The one making $185,000 with stock options. He'd been at the company for 5 weeks. 5 weeks. And he was leading a $30 million project while I, with 11 years of experience and a track record of success, would be working under him. The room tilted slightly. I gripped the armrest of my chair. "Derek," I said carefully, "I've led projects twice this size. I've been here for over a decade. Why am I not leading this project?" Derek's smile faltered. He shifted in his seat, suddenly uncomfortable. "Maya, you're incredibly talented, don't get me wrong, but leadership is looking for fresh perspectives, new approaches. Kyle brings a different skill set, strategic thinking, business development experience. You're more of a technical specialist. We need you in that role." Technical specialist. A polite way of saying I was a worker bee, not leadership material. Never mind that I'd mentored dozens of employees, saved projects from failure, built relationships with clients that brought in millions. Never mind that Kyle Brennan probably couldn't tell a data migration from a database query. He had an MBA and a penis, and apparently that was worth more than 11 years of proven results. "This is a great opportunity for you to learn from him," Derek continued, oblivious to the fact that I had stopped breathing. "And who knows? If the project goes well, it could lead to growth opportunities down the line." Growth opportunities. Down the line. The same carrot they'd been dangling in front of me for 11 years. I said yes. I don't know why. Habit, maybe, or shock. I walked out of Derek's office, made it to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and pressed my hands against the cold metal walls to stop them from shaking. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh and unforgiving. Someone was washing their hands at the sink, humming something cheerful and oblivious. And I stood there, breathing through my mouth, feeling something inside me finally, irrevocably break. This was it. This was the moment I'd look back on and recognize as the point of no return. Because I'd given them everything. I'd sacrificed relationships, health, years of my life. I'd been patient. I'd been loyal. I'd played by every rule in the rigged game, and they'd made it abundantly clear that none of it mattered. I would never be valued here. I would never be seen as anything more than a useful tool to extract labor from. They would take and take and take until there was nothing left. And then they'd replace me with someone younger and cheaper and grind them down too. The system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed. And I was done being a part of it. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed at the office until everyone else had left, until the cleaning crew had finished, and the hallways were dark and silent. I sat at my desk with my personal laptop, never the company one, I wasn't stupid, and I started organizing. The evidence I'd collected over the years was extensive but scattered. Emails saved to personal folders, screenshots, PDF copies of reports, data exports I'd quietly backed up to external drives. I needed to compile it into something coherent, something undeniable. I created a master document categorizing everything by type of violation: data privacy breaches, fraudulent client reporting, environmental compliance violations, tax irregularities. Each category had subcategories. Each claim was supported by multiple pieces of evidence: emails with timestamps, reports with digital signatures, financial records that didn't match public filings. I worked like a surgeon, precise and methodical, letting the work calm the storm inside me. By the time I looked up, it was 4 in the morning. My eyes burned, my back ached, but I had something powerful: a 12,000-page dossier that laid out in excruciating detail exactly what Sterling Dynamics had been doing behind its polished facade. 12,000 pages of truth. I saved everything to an encrypted drive. I backed it up in 3 separate secure cloud locations, and then I allowed myself to feel it. Not rage anymore, but something colder. Something that felt like purpose. They wanted to treat me like I was disposable? Fine. I'll show them exactly how much institutional knowledge walks out the door when you discard someone who actually gave a damn. I went home as the sun was rising, slept for 3 hours, and woke up to a Slack message from Kyle Brennan asking me to prepare a briefing document for our project by Monday. Our project. I stared at the message, then opened my laptop and started researching SEC whistleblower procedures. The fear was still there, humming under my skin, but it was quieter now, drowned out by something stronger. I was done being afraid of losing something that never valued me in the first place. The thing about planning revenge is that it requires a performance, and I discovered I was a better actor than I'd ever given myself credit for. For the next 6 weeks, I showed up to work every single day with a smile plastered on my face. I said good morning to Greg Morrison when I passed him in the hallway. I attended the kickoff meeting for Kyle Brennan's project and took diligent notes while he stumbled through a presentation about synergistic data optimization, a phrase that meant absolutely nothing but sounded impressive to executives who didn't know better. I even volunteered to help him understand our existing infrastructure, spending hours explaining systems I'd built from the ground up, watching him nod along like he understood while his eyes glazed over with confusion. It was excruciating. Every smile felt like swallowing glass. Every, sure, happy to help, tasted like poison in my mouth. But I needed them to suspect nothing. I needed to be Maya Carter, loyal employee, reliable workhorse, the woman who would never rock the boat. Because while I played that role during the day, at night I was someone else entirely. At night I was meticulous, methodical. I became an expert in whistleblower law, reading through the Dodd-Frank Act until I could recite sections by heart. I learned about the SEC's Office of the Whistleblower, about the protections theoretically offered, about the process for submitting tips. I studied case precedents, successful whistleblower cases and failed ones, looking for patterns. What made evidence compelling? What mistakes had others made? I couldn't afford to get this wrong. There would be no second chance. If I was going to burn Sterling Dynamics to the ground, the fire needed to be hot enough that nothing survived. I spent my evenings organizing the evidence into a narrative that even someone with no technical background could follow. I created timelines showing when violations occurred and who was responsible. I cross-referenced emails with financial documents, client reports with actual data outputs, public statements with internal communications that proved they were lies. Every claim needed to be airtight, every piece of evidence authenticated and sourced. I worked in my apartment with the curtains drawn, paranoid that somehow someone would see, would know. My dining table disappeared under stacks of printed documents, color-coded sticky notes, external hard drives. I stopped seeing friends, stopped answering calls from my mother. My entire existence narrowed to 2 parallel tracks: the performance at work and the preparation at home. The weight of it sat on my chest constantly, a pressure that made it hard to take full breaths. But it wasn't just about compiling evidence. I needed to protect myself, and that meant understanding exactly how exposed I was. I consulted with 3 different employment lawyers, paying for consultations with money I probably shouldn't have spent, careful never to give them the full picture. I asked hypothetical questions. What protections exist for whistleblowers? What retaliation might someone face? What paper trail should someone create to prove retaliation if it occurred? I took notes on everything they said, building a defensive strategy alongside my offensive one. I started documenting every interaction at work in a personal journal: times, dates, what was said, who was present. I saved every email, every Slack message, every scrap of communication. If Sterling Dynamics tried to paint me as a disgruntled employee or question my performance after I came forward, I'd have evidence showing exactly how valued I'd been, right up until the moment I became a threat. I also quietly updated my resume and LinkedIn profile, though I was careful not to make it obvious I was job hunting. I reached out to old contacts, former colleagues who'd left Sterling over the years, casual, just checking in messages that reestablished connections. I needed to know I could land somewhere after this detonated, that I wouldn't be left unemployed and unemployable. The responses were illuminating. 3 different people, unprompted, told me I should leave Sterling. That place has changed. It's not what it used to be. The culture is toxic now, all about profit at any cost. Another said, I should have left years ago. Best decision I ever made. They were confirming what I already knew, but hadn't wanted to admit. The company I'd been loyal to didn't exist anymore. Maybe it never had. Maybe I'd just been too close, too invested to see the rot underneath the glossy surface. And that realization was both painful and liberating, because it meant I wasn't destroying something good, I was exposing something rotten. The close calls started in week 4 of my planning. I was working late, genuinely working this time, on Kyle's project that I was somehow supposed to both lead and defer to him on, when Derek walked past my cubicle. It was almost 8 p.m. The office was mostly empty, just a few other stragglers scattered across the floor, their faces lit by monitor glow. Maya, you're still here? Derek said, doubling back. He looked concerned, which was almost funny. Yeah, just finishing up some documentation for the migration plan, I said, which was true. What I didn't mention was that my personal laptop was in my bag at my feet, loaded with evidence of corporate fraud. Derek shook his head. You work too hard, you know that? I forced a smile. Just want to make sure the project succeeds. He lingered, and for a terrible moment, I thought he was going to say something meaningful, something that might make me hesitate. Instead, he said, well, don't stay too late. Company policy says the building locks down at 10. Company policy, of course. He walked away, and I sat there, my heart hammering, realizing how paranoid I'd become. Every interaction felt loaded with danger, like one wrong word would expose me. I started having anxiety dreams where I accidentally emailed the SEC evidence from my work computer, or where I left documents on the printer and Greg Morrison found them, or where I confessed everything in the middle of a meeting without meaning to. I'd wake up gasping, checking my phone to make sure I hadn't sent anything, hadn't done anything to tip them off. The stress was eating me alive. I lost 8 pounds in 3 weeks. I developed a twitch under my left eye. I started drinking too much coffee during the day and too much wine at night, trying to stay alert enough to maintain the performance and calm enough to sleep. My apartment became a disaster zone. Dishes piled in the sink, laundry unfolded, the succulent from my desk wilting on the windowsill because I'd brought it home one Friday, suddenly unable to leave it there. I felt like I was losing my mind, and maybe I was. Maybe you have to lose your mind a little bit to do something like this. Then came the moment that almost broke me. It was a Tuesday, week 5 of my preparation. I was in the break room microwaving leftovers when Diane walked in. Diane, my old manager, the one who'd first called me a rock star all those years ago. She'd moved to a different department, but we still chatted occasionally. She looked tired, older than I remembered. Maya, she said, her face lighting up, I feel like I never see you anymore. I know, it's been crazy, I said, watching my food rotate in the microwave. How are you? She sighed, pouring coffee into her I can't adult today mug. Honestly, Exhausted. They just announced another round of reorganization. My team is getting cut by 40%. I turned to look at her. What? Why? Budget reallocation, she said, using air quotes. They're investing in high-growth initiatives, which apparently means hiring more MBAs and cutting support staff. I have to let go of people who've been here for years. Good people. Her voice cracked slightly. I hate this, Maya. I hate what this place has become. The microwave beeped. I didn't move. Diane looked at me, really looked at me, and something passed between us. Recognition, maybe. Shared disillusionment. You should get out, she said, quietly. You're talented. You could work anywhere. Don't make the mistake I made thinking loyalty matters here. I swallowed hard. Are you thinking of leaving? I'm 53 years old. I've been here 17 years. My entire retirement is tied up in company stock. I can't afford to leave, even though staying is killing me. She smiled, but it was the saddest thing I'd ever seen. So I'll keep going until they push me out, I guess. But you still have options. Use them. She left before I could respond, before I could tell her that I was already planning my exit, that I was going to do more than just leave. And for the next 3 hours, I sat at my desk, barely able to focus, thinking about Diane and all the other people like her, trapped by their own loyalty, by retirement plans and health insurance and mortgages, unable to escape even when they desperately wanted to. When I went to the SEC, when this all came crashing down, Diane would suffer. She'd probably lose her job. Her retirement stock would become worthless. And she didn't deserve that. She'd never been anything but kind to me. That night, I sat at my dining table staring at the evidence I'd compiled and asked myself for the 100th time if I could really do this, if I could live with the collateral damage. The answer came slowly, painfully. Yes, because the alternative was letting it continue, letting Sterling Dynamics keep chewing up people like Diane, like me, like every loyal employee who believed their hard work mattered. The system was broken. People were already suffering. My silence wouldn't protect them. It would just enable more of the same. And maybe, if Sterling was forced to clean house, if the executives who created this toxic culture faced consequences, something better could emerge from the wreckage. It was a thin hope, barely enough to justify what I was about to do. But it was all I had. So I made my decision, final and irrevocable. I opened my laptop and started drafting the cover letter that would accompany my submission to the SEC. To whom it may concern, I'm writing to report serious violations of securities law, data privacy regulations, and environmental compliance requirements by Sterling Dynamics, Inc. I have worked for this company for 11 years and have direct knowledge of fraudulent practices that have been systematically concealed from investors, clients, and regulatory bodies. Attached, you will find extensive documentation supporting these claims. My hands didn't shake. Not anymore. I was done being afraid. I submitted the whistleblower complaint to the SEC on a Saturday morning in late April, exactly 7 weeks after that disastrous HR meeting. I chose Saturday deliberately. I'd be alone, calm, able to focus without the performance hanging over me. I woke up early, made coffee, and sat at my dining table with my laptop as pale spring sunlight filtered through the windows. The 12,000 pages of evidence were organized into a single encrypted file. The cover letter was polished, professional, devastating. I'd included my contact information, though the SEC allowed anonymous tips, because I wanted credit. I wanted them to know this came from someone who'd been inside, who'd seen everything, who had receipts. My finger hovered over the submit button for longer than I want to admit. This was it. The moment where I stopped being Maya Carter, loyal employee, and became something else entirely. A traitor, they'd call me. A whistleblower. A problem. My career at Sterling Dynamics would be over the moment they found out. And they would find out. The SEC would investigate, and eventually my name would surface. I'd face retaliation, legal threats, professional consequences I couldn't fully predict. But I'd also be free. Free from the performance, the injustice, the soul-crushing realization that my loyalty had been weaponized against me. I clicked submit. The file uploaded, 12,000 pages transferring in seconds, and then it was done. A confirmation screen appeared. Your submission has been received. A reference number has been generated for your records. That was it. No dramatic music, no immediate explosion, just a reference number and the quiet hum of my refrigerator in the background. I closed my laptop, walked to the window, and looked out at the Seattle skyline. Sterling Dynamics was out there somewhere, gleaming in the distance, completely unaware that I'd just lit the fuse. I felt strange, not triumphant, not yet, just hollow, like I'd been holding my breath for weeks and finally exhaled. I spent the rest of that weekend in a fugue state, alternating between calm and panic. What had I done? What would happen now? The SEC website said investigations could take months. I might not see results for a long time. I had to go back to work on Monday and pretend everything was normal, while knowing I'd just set a bomb on a slow timer. Monday arrived and I went to the office like always, my stomach in knots, certain that somehow they'd know. But nothing had changed. Greg Morrison walked past my cubicle without a glance. Kyle Brennan sent me a rambling Slack message about optimizing our optimization strategies. Diane waved from across the floor. Everything was horrifyingly normal. And it stayed that way for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of me jumping every time my phone rang, checking the news obsessively for any mention of Sterling Dynamics, wondering if the SEC had dismissed my complaint or if it was buried in a queue somewhere. I started to doubt myself. Maybe the evidence wasn't as damning as I thought. Maybe I'd made a terrible mistake. Maybe nothing would happen and I'd destroyed my own peace of mind for nothing. Then, on a Thursday in mid-May, everything detonated at once. I was working from home that day. Sterling had a flexible WHF policy, one of the few decent benefits they offered, when my phone started blowing up with news alerts. The first headline I saw made my heart stop. SEC launches investigation into Sterling Dynamics following whistleblower allegations. I clicked through with shaking hands. The article was brief but brutal. An anonymous whistleblower had provided extensive evidence of securities fraud, data privacy violations, and falsified compliance reports. The SEC had issued subpoenas. Trading of Sterling stock had been halted pending investigation. And then my phone actually rang. It was Marcus from IT, his voice low and shocked. "Maya, are you seeing this? The SEC is here. Like, actually here, in the building. They showed up with boxes and started seizing servers. The executive floor is in complete lockdown." I could barely form words. What's happening? No one knows. HR sent out an email saying we should work normally, but everyone is freaking out. Greg Morrison left in handcuffs. Maya, they arrested him. What the hell is going on? Handcuffs. I sat down hard on my couch. I'd expected an investigation, audits, maybe fines. I hadn't expected arrests, not this quickly. I don't know, I lied. That's insane. I hung up and watched my phone continue to explode. Text from coworkers, news alerts, LinkedIn messages. The story was spreading like wildfire. Within 2 hours, every major financial news outlet was covering it. By evening, it had gone mainstream. The details they reported matched my evidence exactly. Sterling Dynamics had been systematically falsifying environmental compliance reports to maintain lucrative government contracts. They'd engaged in illegal data harvesting and sold client information to third parties. They manipulated financial reports to inflate stock prices. They hid assets in offshore accounts to avoid taxes. And someone from inside had documented all of it and handed it to the SEC on a silver platter. I watched the coverage from my couch, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm evening, feeling like I was outside my own body. This was my doing. I had caused this. The company I'd given 11 years to was imploding in real time, and I was the bomb that had gone off at its center. The fallout was spectacular and terrible. By the end of the first week, Sterling's stock had plummeted 73%. The CEO issued a statement denying all allegations, a statement that aged poorly when the SEC released portions of internal emails that directly contradicted his claims. Greg Morrison, the VP of HR who'd smiled thinly and cited company policy, was formally charged with obstruction of justice for attempting to destroy evidence once the investigation started. The CFO resigned during a live CNBC interview, claiming he'd been unaware of the fraud, which no one believed. 3 board members stepped down. The company hired a crisis management firm that issued the most pathetic non-apology I'd ever read, full of phrases like committed to transparency and isolated incidents that were immediately shredded by journalists who'd gotten their hands on the evidence. Because somehow, and I suspect the SEC leaked it, portions of my documentation made it to the press. Not everything, but enough. Enough for the Wall Street Journal to run a devastating exposé. Enough for former clients to file lawsuits. Enough for employees to start coming forward with their own stories of misconduct, toxicity, and retaliation. The floodgates had opened, and Sterling Dynamics was drowning. And me? I was still on payroll, working from home, watching it all burn. HR sent out a company-wide email about cooperating with authorities and business continuity, but everyone knew the company was finished. My coworkers were updating their resumes and interviewing elsewhere. Some were angry at the whistleblower, calling them a traitor who destroyed innocent people's livelihoods. Others were vindicated, saying they had always known something was wrong. I stayed quiet. I attended the mandatory Zoom meetings with my camera off. I submitted my work on Kyle's project, which had been indefinitely suspended, and I waited, because I knew what was coming. The SEC had protections for whistleblowers, but they weren't perfect. Eventually, someone would figure it out. Someone would remember that I had access to all the systems, that I had been there long enough to witness everything, that I had the means and knowledge to compile exactly the kind of evidence that had been submitted. I'd covered my tracks as well as I could, but I wasn't naive. The call came on a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks after the initial explosion. I was in my kitchen making dinner, actual dinner, not microwave leftovers, because I'd stopped eating properly weeks ago and was trying to regain some normalcy, when my phone lit up with a number I recognized. Greg Morrison, calling me from his personal cell. My hand froze over the stove. I should let it go to voicemail. I should block the number. I should do literally anything except answer. But I wanted to hear it. I needed to hear it. So I answered. Hello? My voice was steady, calm. Maya. His voice was not. It shook, rough and strained, like he'd been crying or screaming or both. It was you, wasn't it? I turned off the stove, walked to my living room window where the evening sun was painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I don't know what you mean, Greg. Don't. The word came out sharp, desperate. Don't play games. I know it was you. The evidence, the timing, His voice cracked. They're going to charge me, Maya. Do you understand that? I could go to prison. My career is over. My reputation is destroyed. My wife is leaving me. And I know it was you. I sipped the chamomile tea I'd made earlier, now cold but still soothing. That sounds difficult, I said softly. You should probably get a good lawyer. Why? The word was almost a sob. Why would you do this? We gave you a job. You gave me a job, and then you underpaid me for 11 years while handing out massive salaries to kids fresh out of grad school. I came to you asking for fair compensation, and you cited company policy. You looked me in the eye and told me my loyalty meant nothing. Silence on the other end. Heavy breathing. Then, so this is revenge? You destroyed an entire company, put hundreds of people out of work because you didn't get a raise? The accusation should have hurt, should have made me feel guilty. Instead, I felt nothing but cold, perfect clarity. No, Greg, I exposed illegal activity that your company was engaged in, activity that you, as VP of Human Resources, helped facilitate and cover up. I have emails with your name on them approving falsified compliance reports. I have records of you instructing managers to lie to employees about why certain benefits were being cut, while executive bonuses increased. You didn't just deny me a raise. You were part of a system that exploited everyone who worked there while breaking the law and lying to investors. I paused. Let that sink in. So don't call me looking for sympathy. Don't try to make this about a petty grudge. You participated in fraud. You got caught. Those are just consequences. Consequences, he repeated, his voice hollow. You've ruined lives, Maya. You know that? People who had nothing to do with any of this are losing their jobs, their retirement savings. People were already being ruined, I cut him off, by a company that treated them as disposable, that manipulated and exploited them, that lied to them about everything from pay equity to environmental practices. You want to talk about lives being ruined? Talk to Diane, who's 53 and about to lose the retirement she spent 17 years building because the company stock she was encouraged to invest in was artificially inflated through fraud. Talk to the clients whose private data was sold without their consent. Talk to the communities that were lied to about environmental impact. Those lives mattered too, Greg. You just didn't care because they weren't yours. The silence that followed was long and broken. I could hear him breathing, ragged and uneven. When he finally spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. I have 3 kids, Maya. 3 kids who are going to grow up knowing their father went to prison. Was it worth it? Does destroying me make you feel better? And here's the thing. I'd imagined this moment 100 times. I'd imagined feeling triumphant, vindicated, powerful. I'd imagined twisting the knife and enjoying it. But standing there in my living room, listening to this man who'd once had all the power reduced to begging, I didn't feel triumph. I felt tired, sad. And yes, somewhere underneath it all, satisfied. Not because he was suffering, but because the truth had finally mattered more than company policy. Funny thing about company policy, I said softly, echoing the words from the original story that had started rattling around in my head weeks ago. It doesn't protect you from consequences. You built your career on a system that valued profit over people, that rewarded loyalty with exploitation. You had the power to change it, and you didn't. So yes, Greg, it was worth it. Because loyalty shouldn't be a cage, and betrayal should always come with interest. I hung up, blocked the number, and stood there watching the sunset paint the world in fire, feeling something I hadn't felt in 11 years. Free. The next few months were chaos. Sterling Dynamics collapsed entirely, filing for bankruptcy in August. The executives faced criminal charges. Greg Morrison took a plea deal and got 18 months plus restitution. The CEO went to trial and lost spectacularly. Clients sued. Investors sued. The media had a field day dissecting every sordid detail, and through it all, I stayed anonymous. The SEC protected my identity as they were required to do, and while there were rumors and speculation within former Sterling circles, no one could prove anything. Some people probably suspected, but suspicion isn't proof. As for me, I'd started applying to new jobs the day after I submitted the complaint, and my experience spoke for itself. I landed a position at a smaller firm within 6 weeks, negotiated a salary of $175,000 plus actual equity and work-life balance written into my contract. I worked there for exactly 11 months, long enough to rebuild my reputation and savings, before doing something I'd never had the courage to do before. I went out on my own. Equity First Consulting started as just me, my laptop, and a deep understanding of how corporate systems fail the people inside them. I offered data infrastructure consulting, sure, but I specialized in helping companies audit their pay equity, their actual practices versus their stated values. I became the person who told executives uncomfortable truths about how they were treating employees. And because corporations were terrified of becoming the next Sterling Dynamics, they listened. They paid premium rates for someone who could help them avoid catastrophe. Within a year, I had 3 Fortune 500 clients. Within 2, I had a team of 6 consultants, all of them people who'd been undervalued and underpaid at their previous companies. We worked from home offices decorated with plants and sunlight. We had transparent salaries and actual profit sharing. We turned down clients whose values didn't align with ours. And we were profitable. More than profitable. I was finally getting paid what I was worth. The epilogue to this story came on a spring morning, almost exactly 2 years after I'd submitted that SEC complaint. I was in my home office, an actual dedicated office in an apartment I could finally afford, with a window that looked out onto trees instead of a brick wall, when I got an email notification. It was from the SEC whistleblower office. My claim had been fully processed. Sterling Dynamics had paid massive fines in restitution. And as the whistleblower whose evidence had been instrumental in the case, I was entitled to a percentage. The number in the email made me read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. $18 million. $18 million. The SEC whistleblower program awards between 10 and 30% of monetary sanctions over $1 million, and Sterling's sanctions had been astronomical. I sat back in my chair, staring at that number, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I cried. Not sad tears, not angry tears, just release. Every late night I'd worked for peanuts, every time I'd been overlooked, every sacrifice I'd made thinking it would matter, every moment of fear while I compiled the evidence and submitted it, not knowing if anything would come of it, every doubt, every nightmare, every second of that awful performance while I waited for the bomb to go off, it had all led here. To freedom, to vindication, to justice that came with a dollar sign that represented more than money. It represented value. Someone, somewhere had looked at what I'd done and said, "This matters. You matter." I didn't quit my consulting firm. I didn't need to. I loved the work. Loved building something that actually aligned with my values, but I did take a month off. I traveled. I visited my parents and actually stayed long enough to have real conversations. I went to therapy and started unpacking 11 years of trauma disguised as ambition. I bought a house with a garden and filled it with succulents, every single one a reminder that things can survive in harsh conditions if they're stubborn enough. And then one afternoon while I was planting tomatoes in my backyard, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Maya Carter? A woman's voice, young and nervous. Yes? I'm sorry to bother you. My name is Jessica, and I work at a tech company in San Francisco. I've been there for 8 years, and I just found out new hires are making 40% more than me. I went to HR, and they said it's company policy. I don't know what to do, and someone told me you might understand. I sat down on the grass, dirt still on my hands, and smiled. I understand completely, I said. Tell me everything. Because here's what I learned from burning down Sterling Dynamics and rising from its ashes. Loyalty isn't a virtue when it's exploited. Silence isn't professionalism when it protects wrongdoing. And sometimes the only way to fix a broken system is to break it completely and build something better from the pieces. I gave 11 years to a company that saw me as disposable. And in return, I showed them exactly what happens when the disposable people start keeping receipts. Some might call it revenge. I call it justice. And it came with interest. Looking back now, people ask me if I regret it. If I feel guilty about the jobs lost, the chaos, the destruction. The answer is complicated. Yes, I feel sad for people like Diane who were caught in the blast radius. But I also know that Sterling Dynamics was already destroying lives quietly, systematically, hidden behind polished PR and company policy. I didn't create the problem, I just exposed it. And from that exposure came change, not just for me, but for the industry. Sterling became a cautionary tale. Other companies started taking pay equity seriously, not out of goodness, but out of fear. Whistleblower protections got stronger. Employees started asking harder questions. Was it worth it?
every single second. Because I'm not that person anymore, the one who measured her worth by how much suffering she could endure, who confused loyalty with self-erasure. I'm someone who knows her value and demands it. Someone who built something real on her own terms. Someone who sleeps through the night without nightmares about server migrations and impossible deadlines. I got paid what I was worth. In money, yes. But more importantly, in freedom, dignity, and the knowledge that loyalty is only meaningful when it runs both ways. Sterling Dynamics taught me that lesson the hard way, and I made sure they paid for the education. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt undervalued or betrayed by a company you gave everything to, drop a comment below, share your story, and hit that subscribe button, because loyalty might not pay, but justice always collects what it's owed. Thanks for listening.